Monster variants. These unique individuals in the species of Monster Hunter appear under rare and unique conditions, from aging past the expected lifespan or dramatic changes to physiology due to external factors. They're often endgame level threats, providing a higher level of challenge and a bump to the power of your gear, and aren't uncommon to see as your target for your endgame armor set. Furious Rajang, Savage Deviljho, Seething Basilgeuse, to name a few. And this is the variant in question we'll be talking about today. The Raging Brachydios. This behemoth of a monster made its first appearance in the Eternal Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. A new variant of Brachy was something I was very excited for, having the boxing brute step up to the likes of Rajang and Deviljho with its own super-powered endgame tier threat. Fought exclusively on the Ingle Isle, and as a bonus unlockable fight at the very end of 4U's questlines, this was a punishing, brutal fight that you needed to be on guard for the entire time. It's this fight, in fact, that will be the subject of today's video. See, the thing is, a while back I was on a holiday. It was very nice, and I even managed to sprain my ankle going fishing, thanks for asking. But in my downtime I thought, hey, let's bring the old 3DS and fire up for you and make some Abyssal Lagiacrus weapons. To get these weapons, you need to trade Raging Brachy parts for it, so over that week I became very well acquainted with the explosive variant, and I think I have to apologise to it. See, I hated 4th gen Raging Brachy. I flinched at the mere mention of its name and would triple cart more often than I've written my own name at this point. It was a struggle, and it's completely fair to say that I was utter dogshit at the fight and could barely clear it to save my life. It follows, of course, that I would simply cope my life away and barely give it the time of day after that. This is what this video is about. I have, through my recent foray back into 4th gen, discovered a newfound appreciation for the fight, the design, hell, Raging Brachydios as a whole, and it's led me to think about the return of the thing in Iceborne. 5th generation Raging Brachydios may have been a good fight, but was it a good Raging Brachydios? In my experience, there was an outpouring of praise for the 5th gen iteration, and universally it seemed as though this was a massive improvement over Raging Brachy's 4th gen debut. The music, the phases, the weapons, the fight, you name it, I saw a lot of this during the title update, and the general consensus seemed to be that it kicked both the snot and piss out of the original. I even agreed with them for a while. However, I think whilst the 5th gen version is a good monster, that I've been very unfair to the OG, and it'd be nice to compare the two side by side to see if newer really is better, and was I just suffering from a lack of talent or competence back in 4U? First, let's see what the original does right, and what I realised over my time learning this fight recently. The big thing that Raging brought to the table was an expansion on its slime usage. As typical for a variant, the base form carries the signature yellow slime coloration of the original monster in Rage mode and acts that way too. Slime puddles explode extremely fast and are much larger than the standard base species. This focus on the slime was expanded upon in the Monster Hunter Lore of Ideas Book 2. Here it stated that they wanted Brachy to be taken up to the level of Deviljho or Rajang, and the design team felt that the best way to do so was to buff the explosions. Specifically, they turned Raging Brachy into an unstable ticking bomb. When enraged or over time, the yellow slime will change its colour into a burning red, and whenever attacking the slime in this state, it'll pop with ferocity. In the aforementioned Lore of Ideals book, it stated that the team decided to focus more on these explosions, actually increasing their damage value and reducing the damage value of the physical hits of the monster themselves. When I say this is effective, it is very effective. A close range pop from one of those activated slime masses can easily delete 80% of your health in endgame maxed out Blade Master gear, and if you're suffering from the blast status at the time, you are going right back to camp, my friend. It's over for you. This was the main bugbear of my fights with this guy originally. I was completely unable to adapt or plan around the fact that if I hit a red spot, I'd be toast. Sometimes the pops would be triggered, you'd dodge away, and Brachy would move itself, pulling the explosion into your area. It was terrifying. But again, after this week of reflection, I can confidently say that the issue was simply a lack of respect. Respect of the beast you're fighting goes a long way. It can encourage apathy or timidity at times, but you're also going to have a much higher success rate if you acknowledge the threat that you're faced with, and the explosions became that. What was a dance of sort of area denial in the slime puddles of old Brachy became a bullet hell of explosions, each one more likely to cart you than the rest. This main threat of Raging Brachy really stuck with me, and for a while was the only aspect I could focus on. simply due to the disgusting damage output. However, all things are balanced in this universe, a rarity for Monster Hunter, and there's a big design choice that really endeared me to this guy. It's very simple. He's slow, and large as fuck. Citing another passage from the Lore of Ideals book which perfectly encompasses my experience. At first, you may think it's difficult to confront because of the counter-explosion, but once you get used to it, you'll feel that it's easier to get involved with than a normal Brachydios because of its slow movements. Granted, this instant explosion is a very high level of skill to clear, and you have to focus on your positioning a significant amount, but on the upside, raging is massive, and lumbers around at a much slower pace than its younger sister. Using that to gain an advantage is a key part of this fight. It sounds incredibly basic, yes of course. The speed dictates the fight, it's obvious, and the slower the monster is, the more openings you get, right? All it takes is a change of perspective though. Raging Brachydios isn't slow, it just doesn't need to be fast. The explosion's gaining massively increased range, the sheer distance it can cover with only 3 steps, and all of this surface area it can move around is down to Raging's impressive size. It also presents a false sense of security, like a pill covered in cheese or my cat lying on his back. You think that because it's so slow and lumbering that you can get your licks in, but of course it's just waiting for you to pop a zit and kill yourself to death. It is a fantastic subversion to the usual variant process of adding new moves or increasing speed, and instead presents you with a towering stack of obsidian that wants to use your own overconfidence and overcommitment against yourself. For once, it isn't the monster speed that'll kill you, it is your own. Get blown back by a mist-time arm explosion and you're in prime range for another follow-up if you haven't been disintegrated already. As mentioned in the Lore of Ideals, this original vision from the devs showed they had a clear-cut plan for the dynamics of raging, and I've realised now that they definitely delivered, even warning you that you may experience issues if you have a gunner on your team, foreshadowing early and unpredictable flashpoint explosions in multiplayer. Not to mention the size itself adding a brand new dimension to the fight. To safely pop the arms where the explosion originates from at the end of the limb, you can attack from behind or at an angle, and these being enlarged hit zones means you're rewarded for taking a methodical attack path. Not to mention that running through the legs to bait out the slow turn can give you a massive opening. Something so simple as a self-defense mechanism and an increase in size completely changes the way you approach the beast, with one hell of a punish if you overextend. It's a monster that doesn't really need extra moves and lets you humble yourself. Once you get more familiar with the moveset, of course, you can attack at an angle heading for the safe spot between its legs, etc, as I said. I mean, it is tough, but it's an in-game monster, it's meant to be, and it's nowhere near the heinous lashing I used to think it was. John Raging 4th Gen Brachy Jones, I'm sorry, I simply was not familiar with your game. On the other side of the coin then, as this is not simply a gushing epiphany, it is a comparison after all. As mentioned, 5th Gen Raging hit the scene in Monster Hunter World Iceborne and it was met with a flood of praise. A myriad of people celebrated the flashiness of the new moves, which was a boon that was not bestowed on the 4th Gen version, as well as the new gear being incredible for the powerful skill Agitator Secret. What also stood out was the usefulness of Element against it, with a lovely weakness to ice, and not to mention the explosive final phase. This version was fought throughout the Guiding Lands in a sequential chase, going from area to area down through the Guiding Lands as its HP depleted, but the dramatic change was in the final area. Raging would get to the nest, pummel the ground, and in a huge burst of brimstone seal off all exits and begin smoking dangerously. This was by far and away the most well-received change, not only a dramatic adjustment to the previous fight, but came with its over-Gregorian juggernaut of a original track. It was visually impressive and really cemented Raging Brachy as a great 5th Gen experience in the eyes of many. And make no bones about it, I agree, this version of Raging was incredible. So, I'm going to start with what I personally loved, and then I'm going to cover the sections where I think that for all its positives, compared to my newfound appreciation for the 4th Gen iteration, the newcomer might have lost a bit of its sauce. First of all, I want to make clear this is not a new thing bad, old thing better type video, I'm sure that will deter comments like that. I love the 5th Gen Raging fight, but this new perspective has me thinking of all the other angles. Settled? Good. 5th Gen starts out strong and deviates from its ancestor by having a good area to fight it in. The Guiding Lands has clear, flat areas with some extra environmental hazards that can be optional, and a decent lack of intrusive ledges or no-go zones. It's a far cry from the incredibly hackneyed Ingle Isle. You really do get the feeling of pushing it back into a corner, which is a cool addition as you go down throughout the zone. The second change is something that makes it easier, and this is the explosion hitboxes. They're a lot more forgiving, and it's especially noticeable on the horn thrust explosion. Old School would have the original explosion cover its entire body, making responses incredibly difficult even if you got behind it, whereas the new money has a lot more of a generous opening. Speaking of openings, the sheer size of Raging Brachy, which hasn't changed, means that rolling towards it on the aimed punches mean that they sail right over you, and allows many of the same openings you had back in 4 Ultimate. The final phase, of course, as I said, was a hell of a spectacle, and the music is incredible. I'd be a fool to deny that. It's an iconic moment. I mean, in terms of the fight, it is just full of juicy opening to exploits, especially for Charge Blade, and the arms and head have lovely hit zones to smack, which always feels good. However, this is where, ironically, the walking firebomb starts to make me feel a bit cold. I spoke earlier about how 4th Gen Raging really felt like they had an image of this hulking, huge beast that required surgical precision to snipe the slow openings, and they delivered, whereas 5th Gen just does not feel like you need to fear it anywhere near as much as its predecessor. The explosions from hitting the arms themselves don't chunk your health down to 20%, and even the slime now has a significant delay to drop off of the limb before detonating. Depending on your move recovery, I found that you could squeeze in 2 full rolls after hitting the zone, meaning there's much less danger in attacking an active limb than there was with 4th Gen. Couple this with the skill system of the game that it appears in, and there's an easy negation of Blast Blight being a level 1 deco, and there is just a simple lack of pressure or threat that I'm feeling in this showdown. There's no scary moments of an insta-pop, no Blast Blight lingering on your back, and even if you do get careless, the punishment is much less severe. I suspect that this may be due to Raging being part of a title update and wanting to open up its significantly powerful gear to more players, and thus the friction of the fight had to be reduced in favour of a wider net of accessibility. The next change that stands off the edges and dilutes this original concept for me are the new topples. Both 5th Gen Brachydios grant you the ability to knock it down not just from the legs, as before, but now from breaking the arms and head will allow you to get multiple dependable topples. That means with enough damage output, you could loop a topple into a Clutch Claw stagger, which is a huge opening for another lot of punishment, which leads into another topple. Whilst this was a good example of risk versus reward, this already existed in the original fight, whereby if you managed to break the arms, a feat that took a lot more dedication and would normally happen about 3/4 of the way in, then the retaliatory explosion range was significantly diminished. What really gave this personality is that it was a unique reward based on the individual monster itself. So many monsters can have staggers changed if you attack a single part enough, but the 4th Gen reward of getting rid of the scariest part of the monster was unique and special. It's like so many more monsters getting a Glavenus style time topple in later gens, it just doesn't feel special anymore. When everything has this time gated, hit zone dependent stagger that allows you to get a billion damage in, it doesn't really have that much of a fanfare when it does happen. That said, the fact that these are so readily available increases the fun factor tenfold in a sort of power fantasy way. The final thing I'd like to talk about is the new moves. 4th Gen felt like a single effective precision strike. No real sort of combos, and it doesn't overwhelm you per se, it just executes you. A single blow, chunking your health went really well with a behemoth like Raging. In contrast with 5th Gen, we now have wide-reaching, flailing explosions, the final phase littering the floor with landmines that can be detonated at any time, constantly sapping your health. It does fit the wild, unstable nature of Raging's design for sure, but there are so many variants that led to the battlefield, and I really found myself wishing it had been a bit more of a sort of a dark type Urshifu than a water type. A single piercing, effective blow that sends you right back into camp. In closing, I think I can solidly say that I've changed my tune on the 4th generation version of the Explosive Brute. Where I once wouldn't even spit its general direction, after further design context, some sorely needed patience on my part, and a bit of reflection, I think now it's an impressive force to be feared, and an amazing original concept. I like 4th gen Raging Brachydios, and I never thought I'd say that sentence. The thing is, if I were presented with the choice, I wouldn't say I prefer it. I choose the 5th gen fight. The polish of both the weapons and the game that new Raging is present in, plus the constant positive feedback of accessible topples, big weakness in ice element, and the much more pleasant area means that I just have fun more easily with the standard down version. However, I'm always going to feel more accomplished in taking down the 4th gen Brute of Inkler Isle. Friction in games is a good thing, but much like real life, too much of it will leave your face red and your brain aching. I will choose 5th gen Raging Brachy more often because I like to have fun. But with this change of heart, if I want to struggle, lock in, be challenged and feel like I conquered something deadly, then it's 4th gen all the way. 4th gen Raging Brachydios, I owe you an apology. I was not familiar with your game and I bow to you. I wonder if any of you have a monster you've changed your mind on like that.